So I'm analyzing this Husqvarna Viking sewing machine. What is this? This is a Platinum 770. This is a top-loading full rotary hook machine. The complaint is that it's not stitching straight. Well, if I take the thread out of the needle and sew on paper, it does poke a perfectly straight line of holes. So it's going in some things that can affect the straight stitch. If the needle is bent, it can do some odd things. Also to note, with a top-loading full rotary hook like this one, the hook that picks up the thread from the needle, it's flat and it goes in this direction here. A lot of machines are in the front and they go this direction, or they oscillate back and forth. Then you have machines that load on the side that either oscillate or full rotary, like a featherweight, goes this direction. The hook does. There's even a Bernina that loads from the back. It's a full rotary hook, but you're not going to see one of those very often. So anyway, when they're a top-loading full rotary hook, the hook is going behind the needle and picking up the thread, and it's bringing the thread around the bobbin thread, and the force of it is pulling this way. So generally what a stitch on a top-loading full rotary hook looks like is it's kind of sideways like this, because the momentum of the knot being formed pulls the stitch to the side. So your stitches will look like this all the way along. Very subtly, but you can tell. That's why, like a Singer featherweight, it gives a perfect stitch, because it's going this direction and the fabric is moving that way. So let's take a look and see how this sews. First of all, this machine is using, I don't know what size needle it is, but it's some not particularly good quality thread. It's Coats & Clark. Excuse me. It's all-purpose thread, so it's not too bad. At least it's not dual duty. It's got an overlock foot on it. Should be using the A foot. I don't know what the overlock foot is. Maybe they were overlocking something, but as the machine stitches, it's going in. I can hear the tip of the needle is broken off. I can tell by the sound of it because it's popping. So as I raise this foot up and cut my thread here. Now this one that I just did is the center line here. And it looks like it's going pretty straight. Let's go the center line again. That's this one. Now you can see, if you look carefully, see those little pieces of the little white dots? That's because the tip of the needle is broken off, and it's, as it penetrates the fabric, you can see the weave of the woven fabric, and it's actually breaking the threads as it goes through. So the needle needs to be replaced, and it won't do that because all along here it's breaking the threads as it's going in. But the actual stitch itself looks pretty straight. Now I'm going to get really close and look at the stitch, and it looks pretty straight to me. Some areas where it's a little crooked, but that's the nature of this thread more than anything, because it's a low quality thread. It tends to have what's called slubs, which are because if it's a cotton or a polyester, usually if it's a spun polyester, has lumps and bumps, and it doesn't really go through the tensioners really well. But it looks pretty straight. Now you'll see I did a couple of spots up here, and if you get really close, you can see, like up in here, this area right in here, how it's kind of sideways, like I was talking about. Boom, sideways. It can look like that, but this is what it should be looking like. A fresh needle would look a lot better. Now if you sew on the bias, if you're sewing at an angle, you have a better chance of the stitch looking straight than if you sew straight across the with the grain of the fabric, because if you can imagine, you have woven fabric, and if you're going and the needle's going through here and then it jumps over this piece, it's going to look crooked. So so if you're following the grain and it pops over, it'll look crooked, particularly with like jeans material. Jeans material is very thick. The fibers are really thick, and when it jumps, it really makes a big difference. But if you run at the bias at an angle, then you'll find that the stitch at a 45-degree angle, it will probably look a lot straighter. Let's take a look here and see how it looks. Looks very different. So if you look at the straight stitch there and you look at it at the 45, look how different that looks. Do you see the difference there? It almost looks like a zigzag, but that accentuates how the top loading rotary hook is really affecting it, because at an angle it's going out of the trough and it's hitting a completely different hole, different track, so to speak. So you can see how different that stitch looks than that stitch. Very different. So that's kind of going by addressing the needle, the needle going straight. So I'm going to grab a piece of paper here, just a blank sheet, and let's put the fabric in and let's sew in it. With no thread in it. Perfectly straight. Of course, we have I think the needle might be bent too, but it's straight. You shouldn't be able to tell any difference. There's a few holes where you can see that the needle is bent, because it's kind of tearing, it's puncturing, and then as the needle, because it's bent, it's pushing a bigger hole with the shaft of the needle, making a bigger hole from the tip. So anyway, that covers that. Now, there's a side here on this machine. I'm getting some weird speed control, so I have to take this unit apart and clean the speed control module with contact cleaner, and it'll give a much better speed control. So that's just a few things. Quality of the thread, a fresh needle with a good point, the correct point for the correct fabric. For instance, if you have cotton, probably a universal needle point is going to be fine, which is a semi-ball point, medium ball point. If you were doing ripstop nylon, you'd need a Microtex needle, which has a very sharp, acute point. If you were doing jeans, you'd want to use a jeans needle, which has a reinforced shaft and a special blade. If you were doing leather, you want a leather needle, which has a wedge point on it. If you're doing knits, you want a full ball point needle. And all those points make a difference on how the material is penetrated. And as it goes in, it'll make a difference on what it looks like, and if it punctures the fabric, if it slices through, if it separates, and how straight the stitch is going to look. So that's just a few observations that I have.